Holliday Steps Out by John Bruni. I knew he'd come, and sure enough, when I glanced up from the dime novel I was reading, it was about me, naturally, and filled with enough lies to give me a chuckle. Laughter hurts too much to be the best medicine. There he was, dressed in his finest. God damn! Wyaty Earp never seemed to age. He looked the same as he had when I'd first met him back in Kansas. Tall, steely-eyed, and in possession of a most impressive mustache. He hardly had any wrinkles, and he still had all his hair. Though most had a difficult time telling the brothers Earp apart, I never had trouble singling out Wyatt. He was the nerviest son of a bitch I'd ever known, and it was etched in the stone of his face for the world to respect and fear. I'd always admired him, and on some level he was my hero. I don't mean that in a hokey dime novel way. Wyatt was the kind of man I wanted to grow up to be when I was a child, dreaming of the adult world, playing John Law and engines during the simmering summers of Savannah. How I became more villain than Ballcock is beyond me, and it was my life. Blaming consumption was too easy. Human nature sounded like a more reasonable culprit. I was one of the haves, and I was well on my way to having more. A perfect gentleman, the talk of all social circles. Potential wives lined up at my front door, not a whore among them, a thriving practice. Dear friends, my lovely cousin, I had everything to live for until I found out I was very mortal and would die sooner than later. It's funny how that changes a man, or maybe it just makes him less likely to hide who he really is. Like most, I tend to romanticize my past, but not even I can deny the terrible thoughts that had hounded my younger brain back when I was just John. There I was, at the end of my life, with many years of drinking, gambling, womanizing, and killing in me. And somehow I lasted longer than anyone had expected. For a while I thought I really would live forever, despite the blood I kept hacking out. But my body was done, so it didn't matter anymore. "Doc," Wyatt said through his fine waxed mustache, "you look like hell." "You're an absolute peach," I said. "Thank you for coming to see me, Wyatt. I hear you're fairly busy in California. Have you bought your way into the upper class yet?" "Working on it, Doc. Why'd you ask for me?" I could tell he suspected, but he was too polite to say it himself. "This is it, Wyatt. This time next week, I probably won't be here." I laughed, hoping he didn't understand my joke. Wyatt seemed less than comfortable, and his sharp blue eyes slicked over a bit, but they didn't start pouring. Such a manly fellow, very solid and static of him. He was everything legend had made him. "You're leaving us?" His voice cracked slightly, betraying the humanity he hid so well. He may have been a walking myth, but he was no cardboard cutout from a dime novel. "Shuffling off the mortal coil," I said. "The bard had a way with words, did he not?" "Who?" Wyatt asked. Maybe he wasn't well read, but I was literate enough for the both of us. "Forget it. I'm just babbling, as is a dying gentleman's right. I feel spent, Wyatt. I've been living off pure willpower, and as egotistical as I am, I've finally run out." "Hell, Doc, you're invincible." "Maybe," I said. "You know, after all the times I've tried to commit suicide by throwing myself into danger, I started to believe you were all products of my imagination. That I really was the only person in the universe. It was my stage, and I was the omnipotent director. What do you think of that, Wyatt?" "I think dying's done something to your brain." I remembered what the Indian had told me 2 weeks ago, and I thought perhaps Wyatt was right. I'd committed many deplorable acts in my time, but I'd always been loyal to my friends. I was never one for Bible talk, but if it was all true, then my fidelity would be the only good quality on which St. Peter could compliment me. Until now. "Wyatt, could you reach in the drawer on my night table? There's something in there I want you to have." He didn't question me, which was for the best. Wyatt went to retrieve the medicine bag the Indian had fashioned for me from my blood. Some of the usual tidbits of savage magic and a handkerchief Wyatt had forgotten lending to me back in Tombstone. All he had to do was touch the enchanted object, and my worries would be over. And there it was in his bare left hand. I felt electricity crackle in the lobes of my brain, and the world spun me like water going down a drain. Wyatt cursed wildly, and it was my damned name he uttered. or rather, my body uttered, as it was now occupied by Mama Earp's noblest son. I now had Wyatt's hearty and hale body, and for the first time in years, I knew what it was like to be healthy. I took a deep breath, and my chest didn't even hitch. Wyatt in my old body was trying to speak, but he wasn't used to being a lunger, and all that came out was blood. "I'm sorry," I said. "Really, Wyatt, I am, but I have to go." And I did, without so much as looking back at my old Confederate. I'm not proud of what I did, but what can I say? I'm a Darwinist. 2 days later, a nurse overheard what she thought was Doc Holliday speaking his final words. "This is funny." And he was gone. Miles away, when Wyaty Earp was notified, he had many good things to say about the tubercular gambler and wept more than a few tears for his dead friend.